Okay, I want to apologize first off because I am just recovering from a bad cold, so I may have to mute myself every so often. As a matter of fact, hold on just 1 second. Sorry about that. I am back now, and I see Eva has joined us. Hello, Eva.
Hello. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Okay. So, as usual, oops. As usual, I would like you all to please keep yourself muted until such time as you want to talk, because that will cut down on the background noise that we've got. The echoing and whatnot. And if you want to say something, there's no hands in this one, so if you just speak up, please, of course, remember to take yourself off of self-mute, which I do see both of you are on now. All of you are on now, so thank you. And if you need to, you can type some notes down in the bottom here, and hopefully Eva or Walter can help me see that if I'm just talking away and don't realize them. Okay, so let's get started with our labors here. As usual, I want to remind us of why we study the myth, because it's not only the progress of the disciple illustrated in the heavens as Hercules passes through the zodiacal signs, but it shows the progress that we all make as we learn the various lessons of these signs. Maybe not at the level that Hercules is learning them, maybe not at the testing that Hercules is doing, but still to some degree. We all have every sign in our chart. Some are better represented than others, but they are all there. And we start off learning their lower expression and eventually face the lessons that Hercules does as he is recapitulating them for us in these symbolic journeys. We're told that we can regard the first 5 labors as covering the entire period of the path of probation, and the killing of the Nemean lion is the climax of that part of the struggle. Now the disciple is ready to tread the path of discipleship, in which the indwelling Christ is gradually revealed. Matter is steadily subordinated to the uses of the soul, and the form aspect comes to be regarded simply as the mother of the Christ child. The great presiding one called unto him the teacher that was watching over Hercules. The time is drawing near, he said. How fares the Son of Man, who is a Son of God? Is he prepared again to venture forth and try his mettle with the foe of a different sort? Can he now pass the 6th great gate? And the teacher answered yes. He was assured within himself that when the word went forth, the disciple would arise to the labors new. And this he told the great presiding one within the council chamber of the Lord. And the word went forth, Arise, O Hercules, and pass the 6th great gate. Now I received a question on this. Who is the presiding one in the council chamber of the Lord, and who is the teacher? Well, that's actually a question there are some theories on that. In the foreword to the Labors of Hercules on page 17, DK tells us that discussion as to the details of Hercules' life are, and argument as to the sequence of events are not any part of our objective. In other words, there are different versions of the stories, there's different orders of the labors. But that's not our concern right here. That's not our objective. The various accounts differ in detail according to the bias of the historian and can be studied in many classical histories and dictionaries. We're dealing here only with the 12 famous labors, and of them we read, Hercules, by the will of Jupiter, was subjected to the power of Eurystheus and obliged to obey him in every demand. He consulted the oracle of Apollo and was told that he must be subservient for 12 years to the will of Eurystheus, in compliance with the commands of Jupiter, and that, after he had achieved the most celebrated labors, he should be translated to the gods. But then later on, page 228, DK calls Eurystheus his master. Eurystheus was the ruler of Argos, so whether or not he was actually the presiding one in the council chamber of the Lord is still a question in my mind. But I think that we can find many other analogies, like having a master as the head of an ashram and a senior disciple serving as our teacher to the less advanced disciples, as we see with Hercules, with the presiding one and his teacher throughout these labors. Or when we look at the presiding one at the first two initiations, the world teacher is the first two, the Christ, but then it changes over to the third initiation where it is the Lord of the world, Sanat Kumara, for the third and subsequent initiations. So I understand this to mean that there can be different presiding ones at different levels of evolution for us. And specifically here with Hercules, we know that he is a disciple mounted on the fixed cross and that he's working toward the third initiation. And the council chamber of the Lord is that of Shambhala. So as I understand it, the presiding one is going to be for him at least a Chohan who has taken the sixth initiation, who is also a member of the Council of Shambhala, and who has noticed Hercules because of the light that Hercules now radiates as a disciple. This is actually described to us a little bit in, again, the very beginning of Labors of Hercules on page 1 and 2. Dim is the light at first, selfish the trend of human aspiration, and dark the deeds resultant. Slowly men learn, and in learning pass between the pillars of the gates time and again. Dull is the understanding, but in the halls of discipline, found in each section of the circle's cosmic sweep, the truth is slowly grasped. The needed lesson learnt, the nature purified and taught until the cross is seen, that fixed and waiting cross which crucifies the Son of Man stretched out on the cross of those who serve and save. From out the mass of men, one man stood forth in ancient days and caught the great presiding elder's watching eye. He who eternally presides within the council chamber of the Lord, he turned to the one who stood close at hand and said, "Who is that soul upon the way of life, whose light can now be dimly seen?" Quickly the answer came, "That is the soul who, on the way of life, experiences and seeks the clear light which shines from the high place. Let him proceed upon his way, but watch his steps." The same can be said for the teacher. It might be Nereus who was sent to guide Hercules, he is the teacher, or was he just the one the teacher sent? I don't think that's made clear in any of this. So, Eva, Walter, do either of you guys have um, a better understanding of who the presiding one and who the teacher are?
Well, one thing that I find a little interesting is that the presiding one, the teacher, and Eurystheus sort of form a trinity, and they also seem vaguely related to the rays or three aspects, where the presiding one is more the purpose or will aspect of the quest going on here, and the teacher has more that ray to, well, teaching aspect, and then Eurystheus is more the active intelligence or the directing one who like is assigned the labors. And so it seems like that depending on where we are on the path, those three roles may be filled by different offices. Because certainly for like the initiate, the presiding one, you're being able to reach up toward Shambhala, but maybe in an earlier manifestation, they could just be, I don't know, maybe even three aspects in your own soul or personality or something, depending on in what form or how much of a refined level the signs of the zodiac are being worked with.
I really like, I really like that, Walter. I thought that that was very well said. And it by far surpasses any thoughts that I would give on that. I just usually think of the teacher as being the soul on some level, whether it's the infusing soul into the personality, whether it's the soul on its own plane. But I usually think of the teacher. That's what the soul is all about. It teaches us through our life lessons. But everything else is up for game, you know. I think your interpretation is excellent.
Yes, thank you. I too like that. It's up for interpretation, but I think the key that both you and I mentioned is that it depends on where you are as to who these people are. The fact is that Trinity is going to be there, but it's just a matter of where you stand on the path as to who those people represent. Okay. And of course, he was sent forth to go pass through that gate, but that wasn't the only thing that happened. Another word likewise went forth, though not to Hercules, but unto those who dwelt upon the shores of the great sea. They listened and they heard. And this is the first time we've seen that happen. Okay. So the word was sent to Hippolyta, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering these Greek names. I'm doing the best I can from the time I actually spent in Greece, number one, and my studies of the Greek mythology. But anyway, I think it's said Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons. She was the daughter of Ares, and she and her women worshipped the moon in Ares. Hippolyta had been given a girdle by Venus, who's the queen of love, and that was a symbol of unity achieved through struggle, conflict, and strife, and a symbol of motherhood and of the sacred child to whom all human life is truly turned. And just as she was explaining to her women warriors that she had been ordered to give up the girdle, she was asking them for advice on whether or not she should give it up or fight, but Hercules arrived. So Hippolyta faced Hercules, and he fought and struggled with her and didn't even listen to what she was trying to tell him. He wrenched the girdle from her before he even noticed that her hands were held out, offering him the gift as a symbol of unity and of love. He slaughtered her and could only stand at her, aghast at what he had done. And then he heard his teacher speak, and the words were harsh. My son, why slay that which is needed, close and dear? Why kill the one you love, the giver of good gifts, custodian of the possible? Why kill the mother of the sacred child? Again we mark a failure. Again you have not understood. Redeem this moment ere again you seek my face. Those are pretty harsh words. And silence fell, and Hercules, gathering the girdle to his breast, he sought the homeward way, leaving the sorrowing women bereft of their leadership and their love. Dejected and wandering, he came upon a great sea and heard the shrieks from Hesione, who had been captured by a sea monster, holding her between his jaws. He promptly rushed to her aid, but was too late to save her. He went after her anyway, braving the monster, rushing down his throat to rescue Hesione from the monster's belly, and then slashing his way out for both of them. So in losing sight of his own woes, he helped someone else, and in doing so, he balanced that previous act of taking Hippolyta's life. For such is life, an act of death, a deed of life, and so the sons of men, who are the sons of God, learn wisdom, balance, and the way to walk with God. Okay, we had another question here. Why does Hippolyta have to give up the sacred girdle to Hercules if it's a symbol of motherhood and the sacred child? Well, as I understand it, it's because we do not remain pregnant forever, nurturing the Christ child within the womb. There comes a time in all mothers' lives when they have to release the child out into the adult world. The myth tells us that the presiding one not only sent word for Hercules to begin this labor and seize the girdle, but word was also sent to Hippolyta to give up the girdle to Hercules. The problem here was the Amazons were a woman-only race who treated men badly. So it could also be seen that much of the rest of the world was a male-dominant society who treated women badly. So each brought baggage into this lesson. And in this case, Hercules failed the lesson because in the end, Hippolyta was actually given him the girdle, and he mistook the gesture and killed her unnecessarily. The myth tells us that Hercules stood beside the dying queen, aghast at what he had done. And then he heard the teacher speak those harsh words. Again, you have not understood. Redeem this moment, ere again you seek my face. So he did that. He balanced it. He saved Hesione. And from the council chamber, the great presiding one looked on and said, Labor, the sixth is over. You slaughtered that which cherished you, and all unknown and all unrecognized gave unto you the needed love and power. You rescued that which needed you, and thus again the two are one. Ponder anew upon the ways of life, reflecting on the ways of death. Go rest, my son. It is said that from some aspects, Virgo is the oldest of the zodiacal signs. Down through the ages, be it Lilith, Isis, Eve, or Mary, all portray the mother of the world. But it is Mary who at length bears the child in her arms. And it is in this sign that the Christ consciousness is conceived and nurtured through the period of gestation until at last in Pisces the world Savior is born. As in Leo, this is a cave experience in the womb of time and should be characterized by warmth, quietness, deep experiences, slow yet powerful crises. And we see, the glyph for Virgo, it's triple in nature, and it curves in, and that can be seen as the womb.
One of the ways that I had learned about that closed-in part is that it could represent the true, pure virgin with her unbroken hymen, all intact still, because we do associate purity and virginity with Virgo being, a prefix of the word virgin.
Right. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I agree. I've learned similar where like Virgo and Scorpio have very similar signs, except with Virgo the final arc goes inward, meaning like the life force is being kept within, while Scorpio it's more like an arrow jutting out, kind of like the Mars symbol, which is more about like the more like the sex act or going outward.
Right.
So, and of course, in between Virgo and Scorpio is Libra, the sign of balance.
Right, right. Thank you. Let me see. I'd like to say that in Bethlehem to Calgary, you know, the book there, there's something interesting on page 58-59 where we're told that in symbolic language of esotericism, a cave is regarded as a place of initiation. This has always been so, and a very interesting study of the initiatory process and of the new birth could be made in the many references in the ancient writings to these events which have transpired in caves where, if they were collected and analyzed. The stable in which Jesus was born was in all likelihood a cave, for many stables were in those days hollowed out of the ground. This was recognized by the early church, and we are told that it is well known that whereas in the gospel Jesus is said to have been born in an inn stable, early Christian writers explicitly say he was born in a cave. Mm-hmm. Then further on in Bethlehem to Calvary, it says page 177, 178, I may say roughly that of all or nearly all the deities above mentioned, you know, she gave a long list of them, including Mithras and Jesus and some others. It was said and believed that they were born on or very near Christmas Day. They were born of a virgin mother in a cave or an underground chamber. They led a life of toil for mankind. They were called by the names of Lightbringer, Healer, Mediator, Savior, and Deliverer. They were, however, vanquished by the powers of darkness and descended into hell or the underworld. They rose again from the dead and became the pioneers of mankind to the heavenly world. They founded communions of saints and churches into which disciples were received by baptism, and they were commemorated by Eucharist meals. Then in esoteric astrology, the section on Virgo, we're told that Eve is the symbol of the mental nature and of the mind of man attracted by the lure of knowledge to be gained through the experience of incarnation. Eve therefore took the apple of knowledge from the serpent of matter and started the long human undertaking of experiment, experience, and expression, which was initiated from the mental angle in our Orion times. That Isis stands for this same expression down on the emotional or the astral plane. That Eve has no child in her arms. The germ of the Christ life is yet too small to make its presence felt. The involutionary process is yet too close. But in Isis, the midway point is reached, and the quickening of that which is desired takes place, and Isis consequently stands in the zodiac for fertility, for motherhood, and as a guardian of the child. Mary carries the process down to the plane or place of incarnation, the physical plane, and there gives birth to the Christ child. In these three virgins, in these three mothers of the Christ, you have the history of the formation and the function of these three aspects of the personality through which the Christ must find expression. So we see that the sign of Virgo itself stands for the synthesis of these three feminine aspects, Eve, Isis, and Mary. She is the Virgin Mother, providing that which is needed for the mental, emotional, and physical expression of the hidden but ever-present divinity. These three expressions are brought to the needed perfection in Leo, the sign of the individual, develop self-consciousness and personality unfoldment. No comments on that so far? I mean, that was pretty deep, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought that was very good. The only thing I want to talk about here is a little bit of symbolism in this labor. We have the idea, first of all, of the feminine, Hippolyta, or whatever however you pronounce her name. She's a woman. This is the labor that deals with women, and we have the glyph here, which speaks of a mother. So again, we see all the references to femininity within the sign. We also know on the esoteric level it's ruled by the moon, and the moon is known as the mother of forms. So we have that repeated yet again. Also, we have a girdle here. Now, I don't know too many men that wear a girdle. I think it's mostly the women that wear a girdle. Well, a girdle usually circumvents or goes around the middle area of a woman's body. And that middle area, of course, is where a child is born. That's where the fertilization occurs. That's where the gestation occurs. And that's where digestion occurs. And we know that Virgo rules the whole digestive area. So we have all within Virgo so many references, or symbolism is a better word, for all these areas and femininity, all encapsulated in this whole sign. So if one didn't know that this deals with the female birthing, too many things tell us that it does.
Right, those are very good correlations, thank you, but I would say that anybody who has ever watched that WWW something or other SmackDown would know that men too do wear girdles, only they call them belts. But that brings up the next point I wanted to talk about, and that is the war between the sexes that is inherent in human duality. You know, in this particular myth and in the meaning of the myth, we're told that this war is of ancient origin and is inherent in the duality of humanity and in our solar system. There are small but important points to the story that are not to be overlooked. And I touched on this earlier. What did Hippolyta contribute to the error here? Perhaps she preferred to Hercules the girdle of unity given to her by Venus because she had been told she had to, but not because she felt that unity that it was supposed to express. Did she do it under compulsion but with no love? And, you know, so Hercules, he failed to understand his own spiritual mission, but he also failed to understand that she was in fact offering that to him, whatever her motives were. So why was it exactly that the Amazons... Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just found what you said significant, that being able to offer service with love and not just because we're instructed to is an important meaning of the Virgo labor, where because as the disciple grows, they learn about service, and in the early stages you may offer service just because you know that that's the right thing to do, but it's only later when it truly becomes from a soul nature before it becomes a natural radiation of who you are. And so in the early stages it may seem like you have to kind of force it, or you're just doing it because, you know, that will make you seem like a better disciple or whatever.
Right.
And so that's it's an important stage to recognize.
Yeah, right thought and right action. Right. and you know, then the story goes on to make the point of why did the Amazons make that yearly sortie into the world of men? Was it to make war on them, to seek unity, or just to use them? Was it to bring men into their particular world? You know, what was in their heart as they ventured out? And all of this is brought out in this particular myth. Its practical application as well as its cosmic and spiritual significance are startling. We're told that the war with purpose between the sexes is now at a climax. And this time the teacher did say merely that the work was not just done badly. He said without equivocation, "Why kill the mother of the sacred child? Again we mark a failure. Again you have not understood." Okay? You can't have one without the other. You can't perpetuate the human race without having both sexes. It is also noted that this particular labor was not described to Hercules, as was the case with some of his other labors. The word went out only to the country where the Queen of Amazon ruled her world of women, and where men were excluded, and it was left for Hercules to understand the nature of the labor, which he did not. Also, the Amazons, and this gets back to what Ava was just saying, the Amazons worshipped the moon, the form, and Mars, the god of war. They did not understand their true function, for Mary is pictured with the moon under her feet, and in her arms is the one who's known as the Prince of Peace. Okay, now I had another question on this, but hold on one second. Okay, the question was, we're told that the war with purpose between the sexes is now at a climax. So what is that purpose? My understanding is that it's talking about the resolution of all of the pairs of opposites, matter and spirit, Virgo and Pisces, male and female, and every other one. The ancient origin is talking about the beginning of the involution of spirit into matter and everything that has come since, and not only for humanity but for planets, for the solar systems, for the universes, as it is all, you know, the macrocosm that is reflected in our tiny little microcosms. We are now to the point in the human evolution where we are on the evolutionary arc. And these are the lessons that are learned on the fixed cross. So that's why it's coming to a crisis now. You know, we've already fulfilled a large portion of what we came here to do.
I'd like to offer a few thoughts as well on this.
Okay, let me just finish my thought right here, and
sure.
then okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have to pause sometimes. Let me see. So we're now in the point in human evolution where we're on the evolutionary arc, and these are the lessons learned of the fixed cross, where the purpose is to first recognize the opposite, then balance them, then follow that narrow-edged path between them. And sex is just one expression of that whole thing. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Eva.
Well, that's okay. I was just basically going to underscore what you just said, in just slightly a different set of words, that we have come out of the previous solar system. And the previous solar system is where the third aspect was established, evolved, made known. That third aspect is the feminine aspect. It's the mother, right, of the three aspects of deity. It's the mother. And then early on in our evolution in this solar system, it was the goddess that held reign, just like Eve held reign, right? She was the important one in the Bible story. So we had the whole story of goddesses. That was a carryover from the previous solar system, as the aspect of the mind, which is the third aspect, was still needing to be put forth and get and well established within our system. So then we switched around, and it became very patriarchal, our system, right? Whereas the male started to be dominant, And we have been living for the last few hundred years in a male-dominant society versus a woman-dominant society, where women have now had to earn and establish their rights. So I think we have come to a point where this melding of the two forces of opposites have come to a middle, to, like you say, the fixed cross, which is in the middle between the three crosses. And what is in the middle from our perspective? It's the soul. So we have come to a point where we really need to work with soul, which is the middle between the two. And this is where the emphasis is, to understand that there doesn't have to be the two polar opposites. There has to be this coming together of the two. And I think that's what this whole war is all about.
Right, thank you. And that's what our whole solar system is all about. We're, you know, like you said, the first solar system was the matter aspect, and the next one is going to be the spirit aspect. But this is the sun. This is the dual aspect of the two of them. So it inherently makes our system a dual one, and that's why we're dealing with this. Okay. Let me see, there's always a choice for good or evil for the native in this sign, depending on his status and the degree of his sensitivity. Virgo is called the goddess of virtue or of vice, but the root meaning of vice is actually to render ineffective, and that for Virgo is to negate the whole purpose of the sign. The Christ is the purpose of existence. So the deep meaning of vice as the ineffectiveness of the spiritual life reminds one again of the explanation of the saying in one of the rules of the road, for each must know the villainy of each and still love on. The root of evil is really our narrow minds, our hard, small hearts that cause wrong attitudes and habits. The body being but an automatic response apparatus subject to the control of the inner man. Virgo is also called the goddess of the two ways because as the Holy Mother principle, she symbolizes matter and also is the custodian of that Christ life. And it is meaningful that this sixth sign, the number of the physical plane activity, is called the number of the beast. The idea seems to have a horrible fascination for many, but when in reality the meaning is that Virgo is the symbol of the triplicity. 6 on the physical plane, 6 on the emotional plane, and 6 on the mental plane, not 666. So it is to be remembered that the lion is the king of beasts. So the native attains finally in Leo that rounded out personality, but in Virgo, the first steps towards spirituality take place. The soul is called the son of mind, and Virgo is ruled by Mercury, carrying the energy of the mind. The truth is that the body should be attuned to the soul and bring its beauty into manifestation and redeem it. All this is implicit in the sign of the Virgin. The secret doctrine is a clear statement of the whole message of this sign. Matter is the vehicle for the manifestation of the soul on this turn of the spiral. The soul is the vehicle on a higher turn for the manifestation of spirit. And these three are a trinity synthesized by life which pervades them all. Now I had a question here. What does it mean that it's a synthetic sign? I think the quick version of that can best be seen if you look at the back of the book in pages 226 and 227, where DK talks about the first 5 labors of the path. You know, this was my slide earlier on here. that the first five labors, the first five signs, lead up to the point in Virgo where the stage of the discipleship begins and the birth of the Christ in the heart is possible. So it can be seen as a sign that synthesizes all that came before it in preparation for that birth. But DK also tells us that it's on a much greater scope as well, that the symbology of Virgo concerns the whole goal of the evolutionary process, which is to shield, nurture, and finally reveal the hidden spiritual reality. This every form veils, but the human form is equipped and fitted to manifest it in a manner different from any other expression of divinity, and so make tangible and objective that which the whole creative process was intended. In Esoteric Astrology, page 251 and 2, talks about the synthetic quality is further emphasized by the fact that 8 other signs, all except Leo, Libra, and Capricorn, through their planetary rulers, pour their energy through Virgo. And the Tibetan calls attention to the fact that we are now entering the 8th sign from Virgo. In other words, the next sign before that in which the child is brought to birth, the sign which will see many take initiation. In other words, he's referring to the fact that we're now entering the age of Aquarius. And if you count Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, and so on, the 8th sign from Aquarius is Virgo. Another feature of Virgo is that it is the triple symbol, which we already talked about, but this one here has a little different significance. Of course, Scorpio is the other one that's triple. This is significant, implying that these two signs are connected with the growth of Christ consciousness. They mark critical points in the soul's experience, points of integration, wherein the soul is consciously at one-ing itself with the form and at the same time with spirit. So it's the Trinity. This is the basis for the theory of the science of triangles, which produce the changes in consciousness that make man divine. It is through the fusing and blending of the 3 planetary energies by the agency of human thought reacting to zodiacal energies that our Earth will be transformed into a sacred planet. Okay, so we've talked about this a little bit. It's the first of the disciple signs, depicting preparation for the first initiation and the birth of the Christ in the heart. Hercules initially failed the labor, showing that a disciple must never be off guard and errors can be made. His virtues became his problems, and even a high initiate can draw back on the path, but his failure is only temporary. It delays him, but he eventually gets it done. And fresh opportunities will always occur. The orthodox ruler of Virgo is Mercury, the versatile energy of the sun, of the mind, of the soul. It's the intermediary between the father and the mother. The esoteric ruler is the moon, veiling Vulcan. The moon rules the form, and here we are again reminded that it is the will of God to manifest through that form. Vulcan is an expression of the first ray energy, while the moon exerts the fourth ray energy. And we see in the mermaid, the fish goddess, that we have the symbol of the one-ment of Virgo and its opposite sign Pisces. Always there is the duality inherent in us and in the solar system, the second ray of the sun itself being the duality of love wisdom. The lesson for the Virgo native, as stated by Dane Rudger in The Gifts of the Spirit, is to have a clear realization that no truth is complete or even real which does not include its opposite, and that all occurs in between. So we've got a lot of material here. It's an earth sign, as are Taurus and Capricorn. I've got a little more on that in a minute. The unique service in Virgo is that both the form and the spirit are nurtured, shielding the Christ in the hope of the glory. We're told that is another one of the keynotes, just as the keywords from the form angle are let matter reign, and from the soul angle, I am the mother and the child. I, God, I, matter, am. Okay. In this passage on Virgo, it also talks about the chart of the soul will be used in the astrology of the future and not the chart of the personality. This warning is covered in a positive statement by the Tibetan. The basis of the astrological sciences is the emanation, transmission, and reception of energies and their transmutation into forces by the receiving entity. This defines clearly what should be our attitude at full moon meditations and our use of the individual horoscope. The point I seek to make here, DK says, is that it is all a question of developed reception and sensitivity. Okay, now there was a question on this. The chart of the soul will be used for astrology in the future and not of the personality. What is the chart of the soul? Is it the rising sign? This is actually a very complicated issue, and for simplicity's sake, I want to say that it can be considered the ascendant. The ascendant does in fact point to our soul purpose, and in fact it sets the template, or what we can consider a mandala, the actual houses, the environment of the entire chart. So it's very important in that regard as we look at it right now. Okay? And regular astrology does this. It considers the exoteric rulers of the houses, with the sun being the most prominent, and other luminaries of importance being both the moon and the ascendant. When we look at esoteric astrology, we're considering those things, but we're also looking at the esoteric rulers and the houses at both their mundane level and the higher purpose. Then we look at the triad of the ascendant as the soul purpose, the sun as the personality, and the moon as the prison of the soul, our past limitations and our emotions. Now, in the book Esoteric Astrology, DK actually talks about many different charts to be used in the future, even four-dimensional charts. He talks about the birth chart, the quickening chart. He talks about the soul chart. And I kind of picture these in my mind as a nucleus in an atom, you know, with all those outer circles surrounding it at different angles, and that's how, if you were a master, you would be able to view these charts. But for our purposes today, we are so far away from that happening. So let me just make reference to this really good passage in Esoteric Astrology. It's pages 464 and 465, where DK is talking about the triangles and also the astrology of the future. Certain triangular relationships can be tentatively considered, and their place in the planetary or the individual horoscope can then be later worked out. In the new astrology, which will be that of the soul, the paramount consideration of the 12 houses, which are now of such importance, will be less emphasized, and the consideration of the 3 crosses will emerge in their place. These three crosses make together the 12 arms, and it is the energy flowing through the 12 arms and their place in the soul horoscope which will assume the major importance. This I will enlarge upon when we take up the theme of the three crosses later in the book. The 12 houses concern the personality. The 4 arms of the 3 crosses concern the soul. And it is these 12 and their appearance in the horoscope, or the failure to appear, which will govern the horoscope of the soul. All 4 influences of the 3 crosses will be found present in the chart of a master. Therefore, an indication of which constellations are primarily related to the unfoldment of consciousness and to the evolution of spiritual understanding is of significant use here. He's making reference here to having planets in the 12 signs and looking at the relationship between all the cardinal, fixed, or mutable signs as a whole system here, as that whole cross. And traditional astrology actually does this now to some degree by looking at, whether you have a grand cross in your chart or a T-square configuration. We all, of course, have all 12 signs in our chart, and some are more actively represented than others. Personally, I've got no Taurus whatsoever in my chart, and I got several others that are pretty skimpy. So for this lifetime, I guess I didn't need that particular practicality, stubbornness, or the enlightenment that comes along with Taurus. But hey, my second house, which is the traditional house of Taurus, that more than made up for it. But what did DK just tell us? The houses are, when we look at the soul, the houses are not going to have influence any longer. It's going to be the signs, and it's going to be the 4 signs in relation to each other in the cross, right? Our environment should be impacting us less and less, and our environment is those houses. As we work more and more with the energies of the signs themselves in the triangular relationships. And he gives us many triangular relationships, but the ones that I think will be easy for you to remember are like where he gives us 3 signs represented with each ray. Then, of course, the 4 signs of each of the cross. And then he talks a little bit more about it in the foreword to the Labors of Hercules on page 7, where he says, in each of the signs we shall find Hercules surmounting his natal tendencies, controlling and governing his destiny, and demonstrating the fact that the stars incline but do not control. The form of astrology which will, I believe, in time supersede the ordinary kind dealing with horoscopes is that synthetic presentation of cosmic happenings which have their reflection in our planetary life, in the life of humanity as a whole, and in the life of the individual who is ever the microcosm of the macrocosm. This type of astrology confines its attention primarily to the unfolding of the plan of the ages. This history reveals in a small way as far as humanity is concerned, and a larger study of times and season may bring us to a wider understanding of God's purposes. He's talking way beyond the scope of one person. He's talking the scope of the planet here, the scope of humanity here. There is an immense past behind humanity. Eons and eons have come and gone. Concentration upon the personal horoscope and the intense interest evidenced by individuals in their own petty affairs may be natural and normal, but it is nevertheless myopic. The consciousness that we are an integral part of a greater whole, and that knowledge of the divine sum total can alone reveal the vaster purpose. These are the ideas that must eventually supersede our personal concentrations. Our small life histories must disappear in the larger picture. Hercules astrologically enacted the life history of every aspirant and demonstrated the part which the unit must play in the eternal enterprise. So see, he's talking a much greater scope than just you or me and our mundane little horoscopes here. Okay. I got another question here. He does mention Isis. He talked about Eve, he talked about Isis, he talked about Mary, and the question was on Isis, and is Isis Sirius? That is one of the relations that is considered by the ancient Egyptians, and Osiris is considered to be Orion. And if you look in the heavens, you'll see that Sirius is actually the nose of Orion's largest hunting dog. You know, Orion is the big constellation, and at his heels are Canis Major, the big dog, and Canis Minor, the little dog. Well, Sirius is the nose of Canis Major. So I think it's interesting when you look at those constellations in the sky and you see that particular relationship. I personally am not that familiar with Egyptian mythology, but I do know in From Bethlehem to Calvary, page 60 to 62, Alice Bailey talks in there of many of the old myths and traditions and how they're carried forward today, and that Isis, like Mary, was our Immaculate Lady, Star of the Sea, Queen of Heaven, Mother of God, and she even talks about the fact that the Cathedral of Notre Dame there in Paris is built upon an ancient site of a temple to Isis. And then, in fact, the early church very frequently availed itself of so-called heathen opportunities to determine a Christian rite or a day of sacred remembrance. Even the establishing of Christmas Day on December 25th was so determined. The fixing of December 25th as the birthday of Jesus is actually symbolic. The choice of this particular date is cosmic in its implications. He is always born the winter solstice after the shortest day of the year, midnight of the 24th of December, when the sign Virgo is rising above the horizon. He is born always of a virgin in all the various different myths, and she remains a virgin after she has given birth to her son child, as the celestial Virgo remains unchanged and unsullied when the sun comes from her in the heavens. So I thought that was a pretty interesting little factoid there. The Earth, as we can see from the slide here, the Earth signs are practical, stable, and dependable, but they could be too cautious. The keys to it are desire and material expression. Taurus is the desire for experience, satisfaction, and knowledge. Virgo is the desire for expression and spiritual desire. Capricorn is desire for liberation and service to other. The earth signs are all feminine, just as the water signs are. That's yin energy, passive, receptive, containing. They represent the night, and they're related to the 2-4-6 soft ray line. Earth signs are compatible with water signs. They work out their issues via the axes relationship between them and through the trine and sextiles, which are favorable aspects. The same cannot be said of the air and fire signs. Those are harder aspects. Virgo is a mutable sign. Mutable signs are adaptable, versatile, and serving, but they can be too inconsistent. This is the cross, so they work out their issues via the oppositions and the squares. Esoterically, it's the form life developed through incarnation. Gemini developing control of the opposites, Virgo nurturing the soul and the heart, Sagittarius developing one-pointed aspiration, and Pisces developing soul consciousness. The synthesized axes eventually work out as Gemini, Sagittarius, establishing control of the opposites and resolving duality into at-one-ment for spiritual use, Virgo, Pisces nurturing the soul within the heart and bringing it into conscious manifestation. And as we see, as we recap the progress through the signs, this is the second of the 4 signs of physical plane struggle, nurturing the Christ within. The mutable cross and the planetary rulers. Oops. Let me go back to that. Virgo is one arm of the mutable cross. It's opposite Pisces. Gemini and Sagittarius complete the cross. It's the common cross. It's described as the mutable cross, the Holy Spirit, the third person of the Christian Trinity. It organizes substance and evokes sensitivity response from substance itself. On this cross, the man reaches the stage of acquiescence and aspiration, and so prepares himself for the fixed cross of the discipleship. The personality here is dedicated to material ends in order that he may eventually learn their divine use. The misuse of substance is the greatest of Hercules' sins, in that he did not understand that the Queen of the Amazons was to be redeemed by unity, not killed. Over and over again, the Tibetan emphasizes the fact that it is through the medium of humanity that a consummation of light will be produced, which will make possible the expression of the whole. This is the subordination of the form life to the will of the indwelling Christ. Okay, that's all I've got. Are there any comments on what I just powered through?
I thought that was very well done. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, and I really appreciate your comments and the questions that were sent to me. Thank you, Yvonne. Very good questions. Okay, well, then I'll say thank you very much for being here, and the next one will be on the 28th when we cover Libra. So you all have a good evening or afternoon.
Thank you, BL.